People think that they understand how finance works. They think they understand how banking works. And they have ideas about how to be profitable that are silly. They don't make any sense, which is why the vast majority of traders lose money. And by when I say the vast majority, I mean nearly all, like 90% lose money. And so let's say only 67% lost money. The amount that the losers lose exceeds the amount that the winners win by so much that somebody in chat says, what dip? True, what dip? Yes, good point. Rich, I don't think you have enough watches. It's only $2 million of watches. Hey, the candelabra is still here. You just can't see it. It's behind all this stuff. I don't think I have space for it, man. So where does profit come from? Let's talk about things that people think are legitimate ways to make money in the world. Let's take Apple stock. Let's take Burger King, because more of you guys have been to Burger King recently than bought iPhones, probably. You buy 10% of the shares of ownership of your local Burger King franchise. You now own 10% of that Burger King. Can you add menus to the item? Or can you add items to the menu? No. Can you change the hours of operation? No. Can you change the prices? No. Okay. So what exactly can you do with your 10% ownership of your local Burger King? What can you do with that? You can do exactly one thing. You can sell your shares to the next guy and hope that you made money. And that's it. That's all you can do. Richard, that sounds like a scam. Okay. Well, that's the majority of profitable behavior in the world, right? Owning shares in companies and those companies building goods and services and people using their goods and services. That's the vast majority of economic output in the world. The only thing that matters is goods and services. All the money and finance and stuff is just ways to help reduce friction to make the goods and services production and distribution work better. And so people don't understand much about company ownership. They don't understand much about stock ownership. They don't understand much about the stock market. Or worse, they think they understand a lot, and really they're just smart enough to be dangerous. So where does the money come from? Let's say you buy Apple stock. You as an Apple shareholder, can you change the prices? No. Can you change the hours? No. Can you add products? No. Can you change the logo? No. What can you do as a minority shareholder? Absolutely nothing. And then they introduce extra restrictions on top of that. In Facebook, the majority of shares are non-voting. And then even if you owned the majority of shares in Facebook, they wouldn't have voting rights. And you still couldn't change anything anyway. So, in fact, the majority of the stock market and the appreciation of stock prices is the next guy buying. Period. That's it. But they have revenue. Yeah. Show me how when someone buys an iPhone, the shareholder gets the money. Someone buys an iPhone, the retailer gets the money. They use that to pay their bill for the iPhone that they had in inventory. It goes into the Apple bank account. There it sits. Apple sits on a lot of cash and pays some of their bills with Foxconn that manufactures their phones and pays some of their employees. Okay, now tell me where that money from the person that bought the phone goes to the person that owns the shares. It doesn't. There's two rare exceptions to this: stock buybacks and dividends. And in a stock buyback, in order for you to harvest that money going back, you have to sell your shares. You don't just get the money. So if you own a business, you just get the money, right? If you're a sole proprietor and you paint somebody's house and they write you a check, you got the money. You don't have to sell any shares to get the money. So in the form of a stock buyback, they're not even really giving you the money that came from the sale of the phone. What's another way? Dividends. And in this case, this is the actual only case that I'm aware of where money from sales actually ends up in the hands of shareholders. Period. That's it. Okay. So now, what portion of the appreciation in stock and the revenue of a shareholder is from dividends? Unless you have utilities, which have high dividends historically, it's all the next guy buying higher, period. So the vast majority of profitability in stocks is the next guy buying higher. You don't have any power. You don't have any control. You can't do crap. You can just buy the shares and hope the number goes up and hope that you sell to the next guy higher. Period. That's it. So, and that's the reason you have unprofitable companies that are the richest companies in the world. How long did Amazon lose money? Forever. I think it might have just started being profitable last year. Lost money for 20 years. It's half of all the internet sales in the United States. Jeff Bezos is every once in a while the richest person in the world. But his company lost money. Why? Because the market understands that future profitability is worth so much that you could just lose money now because you're buying more money in the future. So you're not really losing money. You're just shifting the making of the money from now to the future at a larger amount, like a discounted cash flow. So once again, people that are just smart enough to be dangerous, they say silly things like, oh, Amazon's never made any money. They make tons of money. They could just reduce their advertising budget and reduce their R&D budgets and just sit on what they've got and make huge bank. But they'd rather multiply what they've got and reinvest in the future to make more later. Makes more sense. And since the market can predict what's going to happen in the future, I mean, the chart for Amazon went up in the 2000s, dropped 95%, and then went up forevermore. And it's just up and to the right forever. Similar to Tesla, similar to Hex, similar to Bitcoin, similar to Ethereum, similar to a lot of cryptocurrencies. Everything that's priced against the dollar goes up and to the right forever because they keep minting dollars for free out of thin air. Nobody needs yours. Nobody needs your dollars that you worked really hard for because they can go get the free, cheap dollars from the government. And here we come to our next lesson. So my goal here, one, I want to teach you how to not get hacked. Two, I want to teach you where all the profit comes from. Because people just don't understand where the profit comes from. They don't get it. Their little tiny brains can't understand, and I'm going to help them. I'm going to educate them. All of your yield, or the vast majority of your yield, as a shareholder in a company, comes from the next guy buying higher, and not at all from dividends and stock buybacks, except in some rare cases where some companies have high dividends or high buyback behavior. And in that case, dividends is the more real of the two because you don't have to sell shares in order to get your dividend. But you do have to sell shares in order to harvest the increase in share price from a stock buyback. So, bank accounts. Here we go. People that think they're smart again, but Papa Richard Hart has to educate them. Okay? People think that when you put your money into a bank, they lend your money out and they make interest, and then you get some of that interest. Doesn't happen. Doesn't work like that. Wait a second, Richard. Are you telling me that when I put my money in the bank, that it doesn't get lent out? Yes, that is what I'm telling you. Oh, well then how does the bank make money? Well, I know, and most people listening don't, unless you've been listening to me for a while. The bank is going to keep your money, which is a liability to them, not an asset. It goes on the liability side of their balance sheet. They owe it. It's not theirs. They owe it. And they're going to use that money as a reserve to go get leveraged up 10 times more nearly free money from the government. Because the government prints money out of thin air. And they want banks to stimulate the economy by creating new money. This is called a money multiplier effect. When one person spends $1, it creates about $7 of economic activity. It's basically the majority of money is created from credit. So if I say I'll paint your house for $100, which is a good deal, let's make it more expensive. Let's call it $1,000. You got a small house. Let's say I'm going to paint your house for $1,000. And then you say, okay, well, I'll pay you when it's done. And I start painting your house. Well, in effect, that work and GDP, gross domestic production, and effort in making the world better, it has already occurred. I'm doing it. I'm doing the work. And so in effect, the money was created even though it wasn't paid yet. And then I, because I have a receivable, can then factor my receivable and sell it to somebody else and go, this guy that I'm painting his house for owes me $1,000. So why don't you give me like $800 and you can make the difference, but I'll have my $800 now instead of waiting for him to give me my $1,000.